Really sad end to the Duke baseball season. Still hard to kind of process how the loss took place for the Blue Devils. And Coach Pollard's no longer here. What in the world? So much to discuss here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us today on Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Our show is also available to watch each and every day on YouTube. Check us out over there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as we continue to grow our Locked On Blue Devils community. Today, I've got Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated here with us to unpack a little bit of the Duke baseball season coming to a close in the Super Regionals, a coaching change taking place right now for the program, and we'll touch on a couple of other topics as well across Duke athletics as he joins us here now on today's show. Summertime has arrived, Conor. The athletic calendar has officially ended for Duke. I hope that you're doing well, my friend.
Yeah, summertime arriving means I'm on the golf course more often, so a little bit slower time. I'm not gonna lie, it feels kind of nice, and everybody needs to hit the reset button every now and then.
Without a doubt. I mean, all the sports taking place now. You've got that opportunity to take a step back, reflect, and we'll certainly do that throughout the course of today's show. This past weekend, or 2 weekends ago now, rather, we saw the Super Regionals across the sport. And for Duke, we saw them in a position to host Super Regionals for the first time ever. You were on hand there. You talked a little bit about kind of all the things that Duke was doing to get in place and be ready for Super Regionals to be played. Ultimately, how did you walk away from just the atmosphere?
Yeah, I told a couple people this. Maybe my expectations were way too low, but walking in there Friday for the pre-Super Regional press conferences and practices that go on before they start, I was kind of blown away by how what's the correct word here? Nothing looked forced, right? Like they're temporary bleachers. Anytime you're dealing with that kind of stuff, it can look like you're just trying to shove as many places to sit into a venue as possible. And it was not that feeling to me. Like the bleachers that were behind Duke's dugout looked like they could have been there all season. It's actually where the portable bathrooms were all year. The little sets of stands down the first baseline and into right field, they look like they could have been there all year too. It was just Duke did a great job in both boosting the number that could get in there. I think the first day was 2686, which set the on-campus program record for an attendance. I should know whether they passed that in either of game 2 or 3, but I'm sure Duke fans have done their job to forget 2 and 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it was a big time atmosphere. I mean, college baseball, you're never going to have, at least in the ACC, you're never going to have the 20,000 people bearing down on you like you get at some SEC places, like you get in Omaha right now.
Right.
But Duke did a great job to make it feel like a big time atmosphere for the first NCAA tournament games on campus.
Yeah, and it didn't go Duke's direction, but we certainly were treated with a big time series, right? I mean, a big thing going into the weekend was the AJ Gracia dynamic for Duke with his suspension and being held out of competition for game 1 of that series. Kyle Johnson's got to wear so many different hats as he does throughout the season, whether that be at the plate, defensively, pitching, and he obviously stepped up big time for Duke at the plate offensively in that first game. And look, you win the first game of a super regional, you set yourself up in a prime position to know all it takes is one more victory and we get to go to Omaha.
Yeah, and that's kind of the backbreaking part of where this program is right now. They've lost 7 straight games in super regionals when a win would mean a trip to Omaha. So they've been to 4 super regionals in the past 7 or 8 years. The first one down to Texas Tech, they went loss, win, loss. And then the last 3 super regionals in a row, they've won the first game and lost the next 2. Now, granted, one of those was a Kumar Rocker no-hitter with like 19 strikeouts. A lot of the other ones were blowouts. Like both of the games up at Virginia in 2023 were 10-run losses. The loss to Murray State in game 2 was a 10-run loss, although it was a lot closer until Murray State put up a huge, I think it was the bottom of the 7th in that one. So it'll drive, it's a game that'll drive you crazy, right? Like you can get so close to success. You can come so close to breaking a 64-year drought, and it's now going to be going on 65 years. And Duke has not been able to push over that hump yet. And we've got questions now on how close they're going to be able to get back to that hump.
Yeah, certainly with the coaching change that's taken place. And we'll get to that here in just a moment. Talking about the end of that Murray State Super Regionals, though, for the Blue Devils. I mean, a really disappointing loss in game 2. As you said, they fell behind early. Duke got back within 2 runs before Murray State put them away for good and really put them away. But then you set yourself up in game 3, another back and forth affair with opportunities to win for Duke. Ultimately, Murray State takes a late lead, and Duke fought all the way down to the bottom of the – I mean, look, Murray State had to win it twice, it felt like, with the overturn call there at second base.
Yeah, I was all set up for the Second Life type of story where all of a sudden Murray State dogpiles and Duke gets its second chance. And how many times in baseball do you see a guy, hit one in foul territory and it gets dropped and he hits a home run on the next pitch? Yeah, Jake Hyde rolled over on a ball to first base, and then Murray State got the dogpile again. It's just it. Like I said, it's a sport that will break your heart. Reed, I think there's some question about, did Chris Pollard stick with Reed Easterly too long? And really, like, a lot of that is Brady Kirkpatrick, the pitching coach for Duke. He makes a lot of the pitching decisions. My opinion, I mean, Reed Easterly's been Duke's guy all year. You stick with your horses in the biggest game of the season. Maybe James Talon comes in there and blows him away, but as we saw when James Talon came into the game, he had control issues, and I think that's how Murray State got what wound up being the deciding run, because Macon Winslow hits a homer that makes it a 5-4 game. Right. So it's just tough. I'll keep harping on it because it really is this way. It is a sport that will rip your heart out and stomp on it.
Yeah, and it's obviously people are now kind of shifting their focus to their favorite Major League Baseball teams, and it's every single day, night in, night out, you feel like you ride the highs and lows so frequently throughout the course of the season. Well, now we've seen a coaching change take place for the Blue Devils. The season comes to a close. Everybody is looking forward to 8 teams going to Omaha to play in the College World Series, and it's Chris Pollard who makes some headlines in the college baseball world by going to be the next head coach at Virginia. What a shift that was. Let's talk a little bit about that after we take our first break today. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I'm able to budget smarter and save a whole lot more. You can do the same. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Monarch Money is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, let's keep moving forward here with Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated. Duke.rivals.com is where you can find all of his work. I want to get to Chris Pollard now, who leaves Duke. Almost feels up in the night, right, with how quick of a turnaround it is to take that job in the conference. I do want to give the man his flowers in just a moment, but just your immediate reaction and how quick something like this came to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to feel sudden. It's not like he could have pulled a Jay Lucas and agreed to terms during the season and left before the season started. Like, that's never going to happen with a head coach, I don't think. But you can't help but feel like the timing 13 to 14 hours after the last out is recorded, the coach leaves. You can't help but feel like that's been in the works for at least a week or two. Of course, Virginia's job was officially open for about a week. It felt like they had plenty of notice given with how much the rumors were swirling that Brian O'Connor was going to be Mississippi State's next coach. So that's another part of this. I'm not going to keep saying that baseball's tough and it'll rip your guts out, but that's just kind of where we are in college sports. It is kind of like the Jay Lucas situation where, especially with college baseball, your rosters have to be set in July with when the transfer portal windows are and where the draft is, and you have to figure out how many of your freshmen are going to make it to campus if you're operating as one of the elite teams, as Duke has kind of put themselves into in the last decade or so. You have to figure out who you're getting out of the portal. You have to figure out if, one of your portal commits who might be draft eligible actually gets picked. And it almost feels like college baseball's player movement and carousel is on a faster pace than every other sport. Because football, you get it in December while the bowl games are going on, but you also get it in the spring. Like, you get it on the back end. Basketball, it feels like it's just this slow drain into the portal. College baseball, you have to turn on a dime and flip your roster over. And right now, Duke is on the wrong end of that flip without a coach.
Yeah, and with so many players getting in the transfer portal following his departure as well, and I do want to get to that in just a moment. But to your point on the stars kind of aligning piece that all of this plays out the way it is, I mean, let's talk about this for a moment here. Brian O'Connor is at Virginia for 20-plus years, wins a national championship, takes them to 7 College World Series, all since 2009, and yet still gets a phone call and heads to the SEC. We talked about some of the big venues just a moment ago. Dudy Noble, they're in Starkville. Yep. Yes, it's Starkville, Mississippi, but my goodness, 15,000 people in that ballpark. I mean, the SEC resources clearly speak, but we're talking about a man who was on the job for 20-plus years and yet still left to take another job to even have an opening for Chris Pollard to be pursued like this.
Yeah, and I think part of this is look at the 3 major sports at Virginia since Carla Williams has been their AD. Bronco Mendenhall decided he had enough and retired, and he's back in coaching now. Tony Bennett decided he was finished with basketball coaching, another one who had a national championship on his resume. Now, all those things happen for different reasons, right? Like we've talked ad nauseum about Tony Bennett since October, and it's not just Carla Williams' fault, but I think that is part of the equation here. And based on what people have said about Brian O'Connor and his relationship with Carla Williams, I think that plays a factor. And then you throw in the fact that Mississippi State made him, I think, the second highest paid baseball coach in the country behind Tony Vitello at Tennessee. They're clearly giving him all the resources he needs. There's a big shift with the House settlement and what it means for NCAA baseball, going from 11.7 scholarships to a possible 34.
Massive jump.
And schools have to decide whether they're going to fund all 34, whether they're going to give coaches, upper 20s, which is what I've heard mostly for ACC schools. They're going to be in that, 24 to 28 scholarships for their baseball roster. SEC schools might be more willing to give out 34 scholarships with stadiums that can seat 15,000, with just the monster that SEC baseball is. They've been underwhelming in the tournament this year, but getting to the tournament, they had 8 of the 16 regional hosts. They had 4 of the top 8 national seeds. I mean, when you're talking about,
now they've got 2 of the last 4 standing with LSU and Arkansas.
Right. And I go back to, I look at it also from this perspective. Last year Duke wins the ACC tournament. They're a composite 20-14 against ACC teams all year. They're not selected to host. And we've talked about how much Coombs might have had to do with that. But there's also some of that shifting bias that we've seen in the other sports toward the ACC gets favored because of how strength of schedule works, because of how the metrics work. I mean, and this year, Virginia had strong metrics. They were a bubble team that got left on the doorstep. They're one of the first 4 out. I don't know if they were actually the first team out. So from Brian O'Connor's standpoint, wouldn't you rather go to Mississippi State because of all those things and because you're going to get some preferential treatment if you're in the SEC? There's kind of this domino effect of where the perspectives are about college baseball and about where the SEC is in other sports too. That's gonna lead to some coach bleed.
Well, now we get to Chris Pollard, and for the foreseeable future, I mean, we look at his legacy with Duke baseball. The answer to the all-time winningest coach for the Blue Devils is going to be Chris Pollard until we get many, many years down the line and someone is able to find the level of success that he did here. And, rev share is becoming this big thing that we've got to start to talk about in a sport like baseball, as you're kind of laying out there in Duke's perspective and how they want to do this. But how would you, Connor, and I know that you've had time to reflect this, and you've got great work put up on your website as well. How do you reflect on what Chris Pollard was able to do for Duke baseball?
It's a little bit of a mixed bag for me. There's no debate about the impact he had on Duke baseball. Like, he ended a 55-year drought between NCAA tournament berths from 1961 to 2016. He did not have the greatest resume when Duke hired him because Duke was in a position of being a doormat of the ACC for 5 decades, really. Right. I mean, you go back and look at some of the records from like the 90s and early 2000s, Duke would have a 10 or 15 games above 500 record, and they'd still be like 7-14 in the ACC. Like, they were clear there. I didn't go back and look at the game by game schedule to see who they were scheduling, but it was clearly a matter of a team that beat up on all the mid majors in the area. Like, they probably cleaned up against my alma mater, Elon, but could not compete within the ACC. Chris Pollard won 2 ACC tournaments in the last 4 or 5 seasons. Yeah. They went to 4 super regionals. That means they won 4 regionals, which were all on the road, by the way. It's harder to win a road regional. Yep. And those were 2 of them at Georgia, one of them at West Virginia, one of them at Coastal, which has a national championship in the last decade. It's just, you're talking about one of the most successful coaches, not only in Duke baseball, probably the most successful coach in Duke baseball history. Talking about one of the more successful coaches that Duke has had in any sport in the last several decades. But there's always a but here.
Here it is.
It's going to feel like it's a job unfulfilled. Everything about Chris Pollard's messaging especially for the last 3 seasons, was that they had a door to kick down. And that was kind of adopted as the rallying cry, the marching order after the 2023 season when they got to the Super Regional. They won a game at Virginia, lost the next 2. That was when it looked like he was a potential hire at Miami. Another intra-ACC move that, Miami, even though they didn't win them when they were in the ACC, they won 4 national championships. I kind of think you can recruit only the area code where Miami is and have an NCAA tournament baseball team. But he stayed at Duke. Duke made commitments to improve the program and improve the facilities. That was kind of what kicked everything into gear to stop playing 2/3 of your home games at the DBAP and really get yourself a home field advantage with Coombs. Now that process is it's not going to halt. I mean, Duke still wants to make Coombs better, but the driving force behind improving Coombs is now moving 3 hours up the road to Charlottesville.
Well, you mentioned a mantra in kicking the door down, right? And this figurative door that we're looking for to get to Omaha, to get back to the College World Series. Chris Pollard's gone. Pretty much the entire coaching staff is with him heading to Charlottesville. The players are who's left to kick this door down in the future for this Duke baseball program? One more timeout here, and then we'll start to answer that question and talk about a few more things here today. Okay, thank you so much for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and your first watch here today. For your second listen, make sure that you check out the Portal Show with Locked On's very own Brian Smith, who's got the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. He's also our go-to expert for all things recruiting in college football. He'll be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Also, after this, make sure you check out Locked On College Basketball. Our own Isaac Shade and Andy Patton do a remarkable job breaking down college hoops 365. So go check out Locked On College Basketball wherever it is that you get your podcast. Let's get back to today's show. Connor's here with me. We're talking about Duke baseball. I feel so bad. That was one of the better teases I've had, Connor, going to break there when we're trying to kick the door down, heading to Omaha, man. And everybody is in the transfer portal, it seems, when you look at the standout players for Duke.
Yeah, I mean, that's just going to happen. I think we've seen that to an extent with Duke's football program twice in the last 4 years. First with David Cutcliffe resigning, then with the transition from Mike Elko to Manny Diaz. It might not have been as wholesale, but it's still the same feeling of who the hell is left. My favorite refrain from fans is, are we going to be able to field a team next year? Kind of like, no, they're going to drop down for the football version of this. They're going to drop down to the 7-on-7 league that doesn't exist.
Right.
But AJ Gracia and Kyle Johnson, 2 of the main sophomores, are already headed up to Virginia. Macon Winslow is staying in the Triangle, much to Duke fans' chagrin, is going to be Carolina's catcher next season.
How about that, man? Yeah.
I tried to get out in front of this as much as I could. Duke had some draft eligible guys enter the portal, which I don't think you should freak out about Owen Proch pitching for somebody other than a minor league team next season. Right. Typically, if you're a lefty who's as big as Owen is and you're a Friday night starter in the ACC with this type of success that he had this year, you're not going into the transfer portal to play
for pro ball
baseball. Yeah, you're going to be drafted in the first 5 to 10 rounds. You're going to get a 6 or 7 figure signing bonus, and you're going to be pitching in Biloxi or Altoona or wherever next season. So try to get out on that a little bit. But still, it's still going to have some shock when you see the number of guys and the key players it feels like sometimes your entire lineup goes into the portal when there's a coaching change.
Well, and again, going back to our big question here of who's going to kick the store down to get to Omaha, these players have left. Any players that remain or guys that you want to have on the roster are all wondering who the coach is going to be to give them that opportunity. It'd be nice for a head coach to lead in this charge. And so Duke now kind of on the clock here, Connor. I know a lot of people are following this Omaha and College World Series timeline with some names involved there. And also just getting to the end of the season. We're a few days away from that. But what do you think that search kind of looks like for Duke?
I think that search, I would not anticipate anything happening this week. I think early next week. I don't know if it could happen on the weekend or not. That's the in-between area. I do think it's a major factor that LSU is still playing in Omaha. The candidate who makes the most sense in my mind is Josh Jordan. He's LSU's recruiting guru is basically the way I would put it. I think he coaches infielders and catchers also with them. He was with Chris Pollard at Duke for about 10 years. So if you're looking for somebody who understands Duke's limitations as a baseball program, if you're looking for someone who understands the way that the administration needs to work with the baseball program and vice versa, there's no better candidate out there than Josh Jordan. He has a national championship with LSU already in 2023. He's perhaps working on another one if they can get through Omaha in the next several days. It checks so many boxes in my mind. I'm sure he's not the only candidate. I've seen Charlotte's coach Robert Woodard mentioned. I'm sure there are other guys. I've made the joke, only partially joking. Dan Skirka from Murray State. I mean, see how much he liked the Durham area and see if he wants to come back in for an interview. That was an impressive 4 days being around him in his program and seeing how much his players enjoyed interacting with him in the small snippets that we get in press conferences. But like I wrote in a column, I think you can be mad about the circumstances with Chris Pollard leaving. I think you can be pissed off about how much talent he's taking away, how he never broke down the door that he set up as the ultimate goal for this program of his. But you can also appreciate the fact that Duke's baseball program is in a much better place to make a hire now than when they hired Chris Pollard. Like, they had to hire an App State coach who had coached at I think it was Gardner. It's one of the other small
Gardner Webb,
either UNCP or Gardner Webb, one of those types of schools in North Carolina. Like, you're in such a better place to make this hire than you were 13 years ago when I think it would have been Kevin White was making the hire of Chris Pollard. So I get it. I get that it feels like Duke is now that far removed from being back in position to get to Omaha, but I think the right hire can keep Duke where they are in the pecking order of the ACC in college baseball.
Yeah, and still, the draft will be approaching, so we'll get more questions answered there with, again, guys that are going to make the decision to come back and play college baseball in the first place. You got to wait for that to play out. So time is always of the essence in a 365 college sports model, but it is okay just a few days from, it's not panic mode just yet. A coach is on the way there to Durham for sure. So.
Yeah, I don't think the date is going to be July when Duke announces its new baseball coach. And I think it'll kind of depend on who it is, but I think as soon as Duke has a baseball coach, the players will start flooding back into the program, whether they're guys that have entered the portal and have not picked their new destination school yet, or whether it's guys that are in the portal right now that are available for the plucking.
All right, well, let's get out of here today, Connor. This was great, kind of unpacking the end of the year for Duke baseball, Chris Pollard, the saga that unfolded there, and kind of what's next for the program. You mentioned that it's downtime of year, a chance to kind of relax, catch your breath, and that sort of thing, but still a great time for people to go and support your work. I really want them to do that, so how can they get involved?
Yeah, duke.rivals.com. The website's not going dead. It's just the content flows at different rates throughout the year, and this is one of the slower times. But right now is a great time because come July 1, we have a merger going with On3. So you'll get even more content that you'll be able to read and interact with. That's all coming down the pipe. So Duke.rivals.com is where you can find Devils Illustrated in my work.
I'll see you again soon, Connor. Appreciate the time today.
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Conor O'Neill joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Be sure to go check out all of his work. Again, subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you soon. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.